I'm gonna beat you into good shape, boy, because I know when you get in good shape, then you'll come.
Hey there, this is Cassidy, alive and well. On this week's show, we're looking at nostalgic media. I was born in 93, so we'll be looking at stuff from that mid to late through early 2000s period, my childhood, and maybe it was yours too. Fun show this week, way better than last week. I'll see you in a moment.
We are sick! So with home! The people are the people as you've ever seen!
The pimple on the pimpliest ass you've ever seen. Mark Roach of Floating Roach, ladies and gentlemen. Obscure, largely forgotten Australian punk rock band. Hello guys, this is Cassidy. Like I said in the intro, I am alive this week. So, last week. Last week was fucking awful. I honestly put zero effort into anything last week. Audio, while poor in general, I understand that, was particularly bad last week. I was so poorly spoken and just vague on mostly everything. So it's a good thing that I'm not taking this very seriously at all. At least not right now. And nor should you. But if you are here with me, I do appreciate it. With sincerity, I do. I really do. Something else, far more noteworthy than I, happened last week though. AEW Dynamite Beach Break. Very strong episode of Dynamite. Feel free to skip ahead if you're not interested in the pro wrestling babble. I don't mind at all. For those who are though, Kenta. Fucking what? So, alright, we'll get to that, but this Beach Break show was pretty good. It started off with a fun battle royal. Tony Khan seems to love, absolutely adore the battle royal. They're fine, and they do good ratings, so whatever, Tony, you do you, buddy. I'll still watch the show, as long as it's good. And this was fun. We also had Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa. This was given very, very significant build. And I'd say that it was hit and miss, the build. This match, though, it was very good. The amount that both of these women have improved in just the last few years is unreal. Britt Baker in particular, she's come a long way as a wrestler, like as a worker, just everything. Oh my god, this match had a very high work rate, great match pacing. It could have definitely used more heat. Nonetheless, air quotes, competitive, very, very investing false finishes near the end. Just great stuff. Great stuff. Also with women's division, some names were announced for the women's #1 contendership tournament. I think they're calling it the title eliminator. I'll put up a graphic. It'll say what the deal is. Among the names introduced on the Japanese side of the bracket, Maki Ito. Probably, I would think, one of the biggest young Joshi stars outside of Stardom currently. I would think, right? Also, Aja Kong, one of my favorites of all time. She can't quite go like she used to. She used to go. But she is still very big. And Aja Kong still hits very hard. And most importantly, she can still bump. Hell yes. So expect at least, I expect her to be eliminated in the first round. As far as I know, these are all being taped as dark matches on Tokyo Joshi Pro. I don't know how they're airing. We'll get to it, but hell yeah, Aja Kong will be gone in that first round. Whatever, I expect it to be a good match. But the big one to me, Asuka, working as Venny. She is one of my favorites right now, like in the entire world. 22 years old, non-binary. She was a tag team partner of Hana Kimura for a very brief period of time. I fucking love Asuka, and she's my pick to win. Expect me to be marking very hard for, well, not Asuka, Venny. Venny. I expect that has, the name Venny has to do with WWE's Asuka, I would assume. We also on this show had the wedding of Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. I have seen worse. It's cool that they got the Sinister Minister, James Mitchell. That was cool. The whole segment was... I've seen worse wrestling weddings, I'll say that. This could have been a more disastrous first attempt at one of these by AEW. Still ultimately not what I want to see. But that brings us to the main event. There was more on this show, but whatever. Puck, Ray Fenix, and Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega, Doc Gallows, and Carl Anderson. Technically, that is to say spot to spot, very good. I couldn't help but think Omega versus Pox, oh my god. Omega versus Mox versus Puck. I couldn't help but think that that's the match that I want to see on the Revolution pay-per-view. That match, 3-way for the title. Just when those three were in together, so good. This 6-man tag, however, like I said, the stuff in it was really fucking good, really solid. But you've basically seen this same match a few dozen times on Dynamite at this point. And if you're watching Dynamite, if you've been watching Dynamite, you understand what I mean when I say that. It wasn't too remarkable, wasn't very memorable, but like I said, very good, very clean, spot to spot. It was what came after that that was so fucking memorable. Fucking Kenta. Like, I said in my Dome review, I'm not that interested in Kenta. But this was New Japan Pro Wrestling's Kenta attacking Jon Moxley, the number one contender for Moxley's IWGP US title. AEW and New Japan working together. Even if it's just for this, they are working together. The forbidden door is open. We'll see where this goes in coming weeks. As always, an episode aired today, recording this before I have a chance to watch it. We'll see where this goes in coming weeks. But as for now, Beach Break, good show. Really good show. And with that out of the way, let's get into some fucking nostalgia, shall we? To start things off, I have pulled the Oxford Dixon. Wow, the Oxford definition of nostalgia. Nostalgia, noun, a feeling of sadness mixed with pleasure and affection when you think of happy times in the past. Webster, however, defines nostalgia as such, a wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for return to or of some past period or unrecoverable condition. That should be irrecoverable. I'm not sure if I wrote that wrong or if it was written wrong, whatever. While what we'll be looking at here is often described as nostalgia or nostalgic, you might also describe them as wistful. I think that is a far better word. But it's things that we would consider nostalgic, generally speaking. We're gonna get into this shit right now. Transition. What makes you nostalgic? I can't answer that question. So here's what makes me nostalgic, and perhaps you can empathize. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Teenagers with Attitude. Battle Robots. Sentai B-roll footage. Martial arts. A proxy war on an intergalactic scale. We know Power Rangers. But how about Bulk and Skull? These fucking guys. They began life as bullies. They were comic relief. Their thing was very much slapstick. A lot of the time, they'd find themselves mixed up in the bullies' schemes. Sorry, the baddies' schemes. My god. For a stint, that is, I believe in Season 2, they tried to uncover the real-life identities of the Rangers, failing again and again. And, eventually, Bulk and Skull completely turned babyface. By the end of the Mighty Morphin series, Bulk and Skull were good guys. Maybe you remember their character arc. Maybe you do. They were the longest occurring characters, the longest recurring characters in Power Rangers, believe it or not. And they went through this huge character arc that nobody else did. Do you remember them? I do. And they might be the most nostalgic piece of Power Rangers. Do you remember Bulk and Skull? Maybe you do, but maybe you also remember the Power Rangers movie. Or how about its villain, Ivan Ooze? Remember this fucking guy? A galactic tyrant was Ivan Ooze, imprisoned thousands of years ago, but now released. He kills Zordon, imprisons Lord Zedd and Rita Repulsa within a snow globe. I remember that. Brainwashed parents, and there's a bit where they were all jumping to their deaths, like very dark. And he began destroying one particular city. He also became a CGI abomination. Look at this. But it was cool when I was a kid. But let's say Power Rangers wasn't your thing. We all had a computer, right? And if you did, then you remember this game. Ski Free. Nobody really knew how to play this game. I, for one, knew nothing. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You skied down a mountain and eventually you were chased and eaten by the abominable snowman. I get some points there for pronouncing abominable right. 2 times, hell yes. Do you remember this? You just skied down and eventually this motherfucker came out and ate you. Like, what the hell is going on? I tried to look into it, and what I read was unsatisfying. So, fuck this. Apparently you can outrun the snowman, and that's bullshit. I never knew that. But you might have also played this game. Chips Challenge. Did you play Chips Challenge? I did. This was on all the school computers. This was a fun little tile-based puzzle game. Originally Chips Challenge, and I didn't know this until looking into it. Originally Chips Challenge was a launch title for the Atari Lynx. That was Atari's handheld, attempt to cut in on that Game Boy market. It failed, but the Atari Lynx is pretty cool for what it was. Look, it had Chips Challenge, that's cool. Years later, it was ported to PC, and that's where the majority of people discovered the game and played the game. That's where the nostalgia comes. That's from where it comes. And just looking at this game, it brings back a hell of a lot of fucking memories. Like, wow. I gotta play this game. I'm gonna go back and replay this, seriously. It brings back a lot of memories, as does fucking Zoombinis. We had this one on the school computers also. The Logical Journey of the Zoombinis. This was developed and published by Brodermund. I hope I pronounced that right. In 1996, it was an educational puzzle game, the first in what would become the Zoombinis franchise of video games. This is the object of Logical Journey. So the object of the logical journey of the Zoombinis is to take your tribe of Zoombinis. These are a race of blue faces? I'm not quite sure what they are. There's a picture on screen, no doubt. You get to create them, you get to design them. Their designs do play into the puzzles. So level by level, you take these Zoombinis, your little tribe, and help them find a new home. Each level is a unique puzzle, and repeated failure in any of these puzzles will result in a permanent loss of Zoombinis one by one. One level that I find quite memorable in particular is this one. So if you played this game, maybe you remember this level. You got to make the correct pizza in order to progress. The key here is process of elimination. Process of elimination is the key. This game, targeted at young children, really understood how to make education fun. I went back and I replayed this game a few years ago. Naturally, even on the highest difficulty settings, much easier, of course. I'm a lot older, it's targeted at little kids, but it does hold up. Some of these puzzles are honestly very, very clever. Very clever. You get certain puzzles in Zelda games that make you feel very clever. A lot of these have that same quality to it, and that can only be a compliment. Let's get off of old PC games for a moment, though. We'll come back for a few more later. Do you know this character? This is Marsupilami. Marsupilami is a fictional animal created by Andre Franken. Marsupilami first appeared in the Belgian comic series Spiro and Fantasio in the early 1950s. A series of Marsupilami spin-offs and revamps have occurred over preceding decades, now existing as a multimedia franchise. Never heard of it? Among these endeavors, though, was the 1993 animated series from Disney. This is the one that I watched. It followed the eponymous character and his friend Maurice, who was a gorilla, and Stuart, the elephant, who was fucking voiced by Homer Simpson, Dan Castellaneta. I pronounced it correctly. Dan Castellaneta. There we go. I can't say his name. But yeah, this show, I remember next to nothing about this show. I only remember watching it. I think I may have had a VHS. I believe I did, maybe, or a cousin did. I distinctly remember a VHS. It just, this show, like I said, I remember next to nothing about it. I remember Marsupilami. I've always remembered the name. Marsupilami, that he's a little monkey guy with, like, basically cheetah spots. And the fact that this show existed strongly, very strongly sticks out in memory for some unbeknownst fucking reason. I don't get it, but it sticks out in my mind. I don't know. If you remember this show, let me know. Because I've brought this up a couple of times and nobody else seems to remember Marsupilami. It's very bizarre, it just sticks out in memory. The Mighty Ducks. Popular movies. I'm sure that you're familiar with them. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Did you ever see the animated movie? It was actually a compilation of the first 3 episodes of the Mighty Ducks cartoon TV show. Here is the premise of the TV show. In another dimension is an ice planet populated by humanoid ducks. It is called Puck World. And ice hockey pretty much dominates every single aspect of life. Centuries ago, the Saurians, who were evil reptiles, they invaded, but they were fought off and sent to the limbo between dimensions. But now they have returned. A team of heroes is assembled, but both parties, through some fuckery, don't worry about it, they jump dimensions and find themselves in Anaheim, California, in the United States of America. Here, the Mighty Ducks become an NHL team, while secretly continuing to fight against the Saurians. Remember, they're anthropomorphic ducks. I only ever watched the movie that was the first 3 episodes. But this plot synopsis has fucking intrigued me. I'm going to watch this absurd fucking show. Oh my god. I don't even remember writing this out. That's... Wow. That's fucking bizarre. The Mighty Ducks cartoon series. Okay, I'm gonna watch this fucking show and I'll get back to you guys. Holy shit. Oh my god. Did you ever watch this show though? This is Gargoyles, a Disney property that ran from October 94 through February 97. I used to love this cartoon. I have never gone back and watched it though. All that I can recall is a character named Virgil. Who was Virgil? We'll find out. But first, what the hell is Gargoyles? Let's take a look at that first. Dark Ages, Scotland. An alliance was formed between a clan of humans and gargoyles. For the sake of clarity, the gargoyles here, they do indeed become stone by day. So, there's a betrayal, there's war, a small group of gargoyles survive. But they are cursed along with the castle that they called their home, and they are frozen in stone. The story begins proper in 1994. See, that was just the law. The story begins in 94, where billionaire David Xanatos, listen to his last name, Xanatos, and it's spelled with an X, so you know that he's the antagonist. He purchases this castle, transporting it to Manhattan. Of all fucking places, Manhattan, where he places it atop his skyscraper that he also owns, because he's a billionaire. The curse is then broken, and the gargoyles are now awake. The series follows this group, led by Goliath, as they attempt to adapt to modern-day New York, and they protect it as vigilantes. Kind of like Spider-Man, I guess, because he's the vigilante of Manhattan. Wonder if they ever had a crossover. That'd be cool. This show was very dark. It had a very complex narrative. Like I said, I haven't gone back and watched it. I tried to find a brief overview of the synopsis, and it was paragraphs fucking long, so it's like, alright, I'll just cut it at letting you guys know that this was a very complex show, with a very complex narrative, very, very deep characters, from what I read, from what I remember, which is next to nothing. It was very dark, and it's lauded. It's a lauded show, and I'm gonna go back, just like the Mighty Ducks show, I'm gonna go back and watch Gargoyles. I'll see. I'll get back to you on that one too. We'll see in a couple of weeks. There was, unfortunately, no character named Virgil. It was a false memory. Maybe I'm remembering Mighty Max. There was a Virgil in Mighty Max. I remember that. Anyway, here's the opening cinematic for Gargoyles. Enjoy it.
1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles. Stone by day, warriors by night. We were betrayed by the humans we had sworn to protect, frozen in stone by a magic spell for 1,000 years. Now here in Manhattan, the spell is broken, and we live again! We are defenders of the night. We are gargoyles.
Here's a movie that I watched a lot as a kid. The Page Master. Remember this one? Macaulay Culkin was caught in a storm. Seeking shelter in a library, he finds himself trapped in a world of literary fiction. And also, he's a cartoon now. He is joined by 3 walking, talking books: adventure, fantasy, and horror. And they all have very distinct personalities that I'm sure you can guess just by their names. And they revisit classic literary works. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Treasure Island, Moby Dick, and Jack and the Beanstalk. I loved this movie as a kid, but it fucking bombed. I wasn't aware of this. With a budget of 34 million USD, it returned only 13.7 million. And the reviews were really, really bad. It bombed critically and at the box office. I don't recall this film being bad. I might rewatch this and get back to you too, but I don't feel a strong desire to rewatch this. Here are a few other films that invoke nostalgia personally. We have The Indian in the Cupboard, Pooh's Grand Adventure. I rewatched this a couple of years ago and had such a good time. A Troll in Central Park. I used to watch this movie a lot. Space Jam, Jumanji, The Road to El Dorado, Fantasia, very historically inaccurate, almost insultingly so, but a very good movie. The Real McCaw, Men in Black, The Iron Giant, which holds up very well, James and the Giant Peach, Princess Mononoke, and the Land Before Time series. Let's revisit video games. Now sure, I could talk about Crash, or I could talk about Duke Nukem 3D, something really easy that you're reminded of every other day. That fucking pinball game on XP. But fuck that. Did you ever play Putt Putt? Freddy Fish? Humongous entertainment. Between 1992 and 2006, they published educational games for children, mostly on PC. At least that's where I played. I didn't play all of them, but I played the vast majority of these games. Yes, Putt Putt and his dog Pep, talking purple car, just a travelin', were among them. Also among them, the aforementioned Freddy Fish, who was joined by her pal Luther, and they were fish detectives. I really liked Spy Fox. Spy Fox was targeted at a slightly older demographic, but he was basically, we'll say James Bond, but an anthropomorphic fox. There was also Pajama Sam, the Spooky series. All of these were point-and-click games, and a very big part of my childhood. I played these on my dad's computer, mostly. It's where I also played Commander Keen, a series of 2D platformers that were definitely not Mario. I played Commander Keen, I believe, the numbering is kind of weird because the first 3 Commander Keen games are actually just the first 3 parts of the first Commander Keen game. I played what I believe was the 4th game, but I think in proper continuity it's the 2nd. Goodbye Galaxy. I played Commander King Goodbye Galaxy. That's the one I played the most. But I played all of these games, and what I would find out later were some bootleg versions of these games. I loved them, but like I said, not Mario. On my father's computer, I'd also access primitive Australian internet. And as a child obsessed with Pokemon, I was eagerly awaiting the release of Generation 2 around this same time. Through the power of this ancient internet, I discovered Pika-Blue. Obviously, this is Meryl from Generation 2, but I was led to believe, such as many others, and it was subject to a lot of schoolyard talk at this point, that this was Pikachu's new water evolution, Pika-Blue. The internet. This is my first exposure to the internet, basically. I did play a number of games on my father's computer. On my mother's computer, which was actually her husband's computer, I played some games too. I played this one weird adventure game from fucking McDonald's. Ronald McDonald, Grimace, and all of those guys go to space. Did anybody else play this game? I'm not sure if this was just an Australian thing, or I don't know what's up. I don't even know its name. I'll definitely put a picture up, but as I'm recording this, I don't know. I just remember this fucking game strongly. That particular PC also saw its fair share of Age of Empires. The first one. I wish that I had more to say about it. I just really loved this game. Here's a quick list of some other games that invoke nostalgia. At least in me. Super Punch-Out! The first 4 Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games. I spent most of my time on 3 and 4. Toy Story 2 on the N64 and the PS1. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Wild Arms. Digimon World. I also quite like Digimon World 2. Marvel Superheroes vs. Capcom Street Fighter. I played that one on PS1 a lot. Pokemon Stadium. The Legend of Dragoon. And the first Ratchet and Clank game. Now, we'll come back to look at some more material in just a moment. Because it is time for the Song of the Week this week. Fitting with the theme, this song is rich with personal nostalgia. From their 2007 LP entitled Enjoy. This is I Hate You by Floating Roach. We'll be back to look at Nickelodeon as well as Australian nostalgia right after this song. Enjoy it, guys.
Give a shit.
Super juicy corn cobbets, specially grown to be super juicy. So juicy they're simply bursting with flame. Ah, McCain, you've done it again.
Oh. Jan? Jan? Where's our ad in the Yellow Pages directory?
Keep calm. Count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10.
Not happy, Jan!
It's on now! JB Hi-Fi's wildest, craziest stock take sale ever! There's up to 50% off DVDs, CDs, videotapes and CD-Rs. In fact, there's crazy savings on everything! Sale ends this Sunday, so hurry! JB, you've done it again!
Dad, why did they make it the Great Wall of China?
That was during the time of Emperor Nazi Goring, and it was to keep the rabbits out. There's too many rabbits in China.
Okay, now Daniel will do his talk on China.
I was born in the Australian state of Victoria in the year 1993. In this episode, we've been going through a lot of childhood nostalgia, an amount of media from a certain window of time. But there are things that only the Aussie Gen Y will really get. And no, I don't mean pluck a duck from Hey Hey It's Saturday. And I don't mean Humphrey B. Bear either. I'm talking about, did you ever watch Lil Elvis? He performed with his band, the Truck Stoppers. This was a cartoon, Lil Elvis and the Truck Stoppers. How about how none of those kids on ABC could draw the fucking logo correctly? I mean, look at this shit. Hopefully you know where I'm at. So, where better to start than right here? The Wiggles. We all grew up with them. We all still remember a number of their songs. And a lot of us likely saw the Wiggles live. Or we watched one of their many TV shows. We owned a VHS. Something. The Wiggles were fucking huge. I mean, like basically Beatlemania for children. The Wiggles were insanely popular. And they still are. At this point, they're a huge fucking company. A global corporation more than an Australian youth institution. So I guess maybe the Wiggles weren't a great place to begin with after all. They're not really what you'd call nostalgic if they're still around, still alive and kicking, Jeff still waking up. How then about Cheese TV? Weekday mornings beginning on the 17th of July, 1995, broadcast on Network 10. Cheese TV featured cartoons buffered by hosts Jade and Ryan in variety segments, I guess. Notable cartoons featured on Cheese TV included Dragon Ball Z, that was the big one, and Pokemon. They both were probably, well, not even probably, they were definitely the two most notable, the two big ones. But we also had SpongeBob SquarePants was another notable one. The 2003 Ninja Turtles series, which was really fucking good. That was the last little, kind of the last hurrah of me watching Cheese TV. as I was entering my double digits. We had Rugrats was there as well. We got a One Piece, apparently. From what I read, that is, from what I read in pulling research. Though I never remember seeing One Piece. Towards the end of Cheese TV, we also had the 1967 Spider-Man show, which was really odd, but really fucking cool. You might also recall waking up too early and having to watch 10 to 15 minutes of some fucking aerobics show while waiting for Cheese TV to start. Or you might remember the Play School-esque show that came afterwards, What's in the Box? But you shouldn't remember that, because school had started by then. Naughty. Cheese TV eventually, as all good things, came to an end. It was nixed and replaced by Toasted TV in 2005. Now let me be the first to say, fuck Toasted TV. Fuck Toasted TV. Did you know that Cheese TV existed for little over 9 years, while Toasted TV, aka Satan, lasted for 15 fucking years. This is completely unacceptable, and as such, we are moving on. Yep. You remember this show. Totally Wild. Another Network 10 production, Totally Wild launched in 1992 and still exists today, though on far lesser subsidiary channels of Network 10. This aired in the mid-afternoon. Targeted at children coming home from school, Totally Wild is formatted as a light news program. Best way to describe it. They discuss topics concerning Australia's native plant and wildlife. Along with that, they covered the environment, I suppose that native plant life, technology, and other general sciences. Totally Wild was great in every sense of the word. It should not and cannot be understated. Educational TV for children done perfectly, just perfect. And after 27 seasons, it will be coming to an end in July of 2021. Host Stacey Thompson, Ranger Stacey, has remained with the show since its debut in 1992. It doesn't need to be asked. You definitely know and fondly remember Totally Wild. How about Napoleon? One of my favorite childhood movies. This was released in 1995 and follows a golden retriever puppy named Muffin, who runs away from his Sydney home and explores the Australian bush, meeting a metric fuckton of native Australian animals. And along the way, he is stalked by an evil feral cat throughout this spirit journey of his. Memorably, this cat believes that Muffin is a large mouse. I hope that somebody else remembers this movie. This is another one of those, I've mentioned it and people don't know it, but I'm like, wow, this was like a big piece of my childhood. What? Oh well. Tell me if you know this. Tell me if you remember this movie. And this movie, The Wog Boy. This is an Aussie comedy from 2000, written by and starring Nick Giannopoulos. He plays Steve. Steve is a doll bludger and a Greek Australian. This is a very painfully accurate portrayal of the Aussie wog culture at the time. And I say that, believe me, not disparagingly at all. My mother's husband was a second-generation Greek Australian himself. just like the character Steve. This film is hilariously accurate. There was a sequel, but it's not quite as good. Here's a commercial that you may remember.
This monster burst out and he ate my whole guts and he ate my whole body and then he ate my cat. This octopus came out the bathroom and he grabbed me and he squeezed the blood out of me. Crocodile came up, bit my guts out and bit me into pieces, and even my legs went that way and even my head went that way. Are you HBA?
Absolute classic. But it needs to be said, that kid is a fucking liar. None of that ever happened. That was Alex Breton, aged 3. This is him now. He is now 24 years old, and having recovered from a vicious crocodile attack in his youth, Alex today is a personal trainer and fitness coach. Good for you. And this is comedian Jamie Dunn. But you probably don't know him as Jamie Dunn. You definitely know him better as Aggro, this fucking puppet. Hosting Aggro's Cartoon Connection on weekday mornings from 1989 to 1997, Aggro was a sardonic, moody, wildly inappropriate for kids puppet whose shows were often heavily edited so as to remove a ton of cuss words, sexual innuendos, degradation of co-hosts, and just other such adult-oriented humor. There were uncensored VHS tapes and live shows. They were both produced specifically towards a much older, mature audience. I did actually own some of those tapes as a child. I recall a great many cuss words being used, very little else though. Aggro did host a similar show to Cartoon Connection in the 80s. Wombat, it was called. Though this was before I was born. It ended in 1990, 3 years before I was born. One thing that made Aggro unique, well, I guess one thing among many that made Aggro unique was that he constantly broke the fourth wall. It was one of his things. A lot of the satire was self-deprecating, calling attention to the fact that he was a puppet. Nowadays, though, what is Aggro up to now? What is this 11-time Logie Award-winning puppet doing? Aggro is starring in commercials for Uber Eats. He is finally there, guys. He's finally there, the top of the mountain. Say, do you do drugs? I don't. Drugs are for losers. And I know that thanks to my friend Harold. Healthy Harold is a giraffe. He travels in a van and visits Australian kids at school to teach them about health. He is the mascot for Life Education, founded by Ted Knopfs, a Methodist minister, in 1979. The primary focus of Life Education, at first, was the so-called youth drug crisis, offering education and rehabilitation, though did over the years expand its focus greatly. Now visiting children, as I said, in a bus, at school, teaching them about their bodies, about health, all of that good stuff. Despite being a minister, Knopfs founded the organization as non-religious, and it has remained secular in perpetuity. Also perpetual are my fond memories of those annual visits from Harold, our friend forever. They were always so fun. There is nothing to mock here. If that's what you're expecting, no. Not one bad word can be said. Life Education and our friend Healthy Harold, for over 40 years now, have done great work across the country, as well as in New Zealand and the UK. It's awesome. I fucking love this draft. I fucking love this draft. So, we all watched Bananas in Pajamas, right? What can be said of it? Like, at this point, honestly. How about Play School? Remember those windows, that whole bit? Am I the only one that always wanted to go through the arch-shaped window? I think because it was an unusual shape, you know? You know about circles, you know about squares and triangles, but an arch, that's a new shape. That's unique, you know? And as a child, that's fucking fascinating. You want them to go through the arch, right? How about Feral TV? Do you remember that? There were puppets in the sewers with their own TV channel. No? Okay. Well, this is the last bit for the Australian nostalgia section. Blinky Bill. With origins dating back to 1933, this anthropomorphic koala is a bona fide Australian icon. There were many books, there was a live-action TV series in the 1980s, but in the early mid-90s, ABC aired the children's cartoon, The Adventures of Blinky Bill. This followed the titular koala and his friends in their adventures, better described probably as activities more than adventures. Their activities in Green Patch, which was their Aussie bushland home. Blinky Bill, or I should say The Adventures of Blinky Bill, as it was called, was my first memory, my earliest memory of television. Predating WCW and Agro and Blue's Clues and The Simpsons, any of those four, likely one of those four was my first exposure to TV. My earliest memory of watching moving picture on a screen was The Adventures of Blinky Bill. That's the earliest one that I remember. And there is a very strong fondness, nostalgia for this image of Blinky Bill, unlike anything else. As a child, between reading Possum Magic and playing DKC 2, I also watched a lot of Nickelodeon. So let's talk briefly about Nickelodeon. If you were watching Nick in the late 90s, then perhaps you can answer me this simple question. Who loves orange soda? Cal Kimball. Cal loves orange soda. Keenan and Cal aired on Nickelodeon from August 96 through to July 2000. It followed the two titular teenage characters, Keenan and Cal, and their various misadventures from their city of Chicago, Illinois. This show was extremely popular, and while it was targeted at a slightly older demographic, I watched it and the reruns for several years. I have watched all 60-ish episodes over again in my adult life. Not many of the jokes or gags land, not like they did when I was a kid, but it is such a fun time to relive this piece of my childhood regardless. Go back and watch Keenan and Kel. You'll be glad that you did. Hey Arnold was another very popular show. Between 1996 and 2004, we watched as Arnold and his friends just kind of lived their urban life in the inner city of New York. There was a certain realistic quality to it that made Hey Arnold very special. One episode that really sticks out in memory is Season 1's Pigeon Man. Arnold's pet pigeon grows sick, and the only person that can help is the fabled Pigeon Man, a mysterious figure existing in legends among the neighborhood children. Upon meeting him, the stories, Arnold finds, are widely exaggerated. His name is Vincent, a local hermit that prefers the company of birds to people. Vincent assists Arnold's sick pigeon, and he provides it medicine. Then we learn his story. Vincent took a strong interest in birds as a child. This alienated him among his peers, who all thought that he was weird. Arnold invites Vincent out for pizza, and upon returning, they find the rooftop where Vincent lives to be completely destroyed. Vincent is disappointed in people, so he chooses to leave the city. Despite his disappointment, he tells Arnold that his kindness helped him regain faith in people. Some people, he says, are meant to be with people, and others, like me, are just different. And his pigeons fly him off into the sunset. I watched this as a child. This is fucking beautiful. Do you remember Face? That was his name. Face. The host of Nick Jr. from 1994 through to 2004. Face was the buffer between Nick Jr. programming, most often just introducing the next show. He didn't do much, old Face. Thus, there isn't a lot to be said about Face. But Face, man, he was fucking reliable, alright? For over 10 years, he was reliable. And I felt a strong kinship with Face. Because we both had the same favorite show, Blue's Clues. Remember Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper? Why did they have different surnames? Kablam was another great 90s Nickelodeon show. During research, I found that I likely only ever saw one episode. Sorry, I misspoke. I only ever saw season 1 episodes in my youth. So that specifically is what I'm going to talk about with regard to Kablam. So Kablam was another animated variety show. It was bridged by 2 cartoon hosts. These guys, Henry and June, and their little segments were always really good. Of the featured programs though, my favorite was one called Action League Now. This was a slapstick parody of superheroes. It used stop motion and toys. There is a certain guerrilla quality that I appreciated then and I appreciate so much today. Just look at this shit. This is great. There was also Sniz and Fondue, a comedic cartoon of odd couple otters. Angela Anaconda was also featured in Kablam's first season. But I fucking hated that show. I absolutely hated Angela Anaconda. Do you know why? Would you like to know why? Just look at these fucking characters. You trying to tell me they're not fucking creepy? This is nightmare fuel. Fuck this. Kablam, however, was awesome. I'm sure that you have watched Cat Dog. I remember that several-parter where Cat Dog went on a huge journey to find their parents. That's the one that sticks out the strongest in memory. But fuck the show Cat Dog. What about the video game? Did you ever play the Cat Dog video game? There was only ever one. It was developed by Hasbro Interactive, published for Windows PC in late 1999. Cat Dog Quest for the Golden Hydrant. As you can no doubt see, we got the cover here that's looking a little bit like Indiana Jones. You see Cat there with the little pose and the hats, little shiny. Yeah. This game is nothing like Indie though. It's 6 shitty minigames. And I played it a fair bit as a child. Maybe you did too. We are going to close out today with the Angry Beavers. The dates on this show were 97 through 2001. Angry Beavers was about Daggett and Norbert. They moved out of their parents' home to live independently with each other in way out of town, Oregon. They're way out of town. These two characters had such a strong, funny dynamic. They really played off of each other very well. That is really strong in my memory. That their dynamic shared was really good. There was also one episode I remember where I don't know their names, which one was which, but one of them was going to punch the other into last week, and he kept on doing it. He kept on literally punching him into last week, like sending him back in time with a punch. And there was another one with rabbits that kept saying stuff like, forget about it. They were like mobsters, weird. Really weird. I remember those two episodes and no others. From what I've read about the Angry Beavers, though, this holds up very well. I've never actually gone back and watched it. So I can only take their word for it. The great they, from what I have read. It apparently holds up very well and is one of the best Nick shows from this period of time in that regard. Being that I haven't watched the Angry Beavers since I was a child, why don't we take a look at the opening credits, eh? Here they are. Wow. I haven't seen that in close to 20 years, most likely. Oh my fucking god, wow. I don't know which one is Daggett and which one is Norbert, but I think Norbert was the brown one, and he was a bit slower. That was their strong dynamic, you know. I forgot that he crashes into the screen. I forgot about that. Yeah, I remember. Oh my god. Wow. Well, that made me feel nostalgic. And I hope that anything at all in this podcast made you feel nostalgic, my friends. That is the show for this week. I hope it was better than last week. It was, right? It was. Let me know if it was. Alright, so I have coming up next week something else that's kind of interesting, right? Something else that's a little interesting. I'm going to be talking about Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, the re-release on the Nintendo Switch. I have never played this game. I never played it on the Wii U, so it'll be my first time playing it, and I'm going to talk about it next week. So I'll see you guys then. Bye, friends.
We are dead! So we're gone! The people are the people that you've ever seen!
A bottle of milk, thanks.
Low fat, no fat, full cream, high calcium, high protein soy, light skim, omega-3, high calcium with vitamin D and folate or extra dollop.
I just want milk that tastes like real milk.
This tastes like full cream milk. And only 2% fat.
Paul's Smarter White Milk. Smart choice.
Konnichiwa. This is Samurai-sama. Why are you still here? Podcast over. But, speaking of which, Why samurai-sama not acknowledge ever on no podcast? Fuck you, Cassidy-chan. Samurai demand segment next week. Samurai-sama invade Cassidy arrive. You almost bad as Benno Sento-san. Samurai traitor who steal scroll. Fuck you, Benno Sento-san. Click link to listen to Samurai-sama seek revenge on Benno Sento-san. Compilation from procrastinated podcast. And remember, fuck you, Benno Sento-san. Okay, until next time. Sayonara.